Good morning, everyone on the West Coast, and good afternoon, everyone joining us from across the country. I'm Chris Bennett, publisher and CEO of the Seattle Medium Newspaper Group, and I'd like to welcome everyone to the NNPA Fund webinar series, Business Insight, presented by the Facebook Journalism Project. Our topic of discussion for today is branded content, adding new clients and new dollars, as we'll really get into how you can generate revenue utilizing the branded content concept to better help position your publication for the upcoming year. Before we get started, we want to conduct a poll, and that should be appearing in front of your screen right now. We're going to take a few minutes to let people fill out the poll, and it just disappeared. I think it's still up, but it has a couple of questions about branded content, your knowledge of branded content. So we'll take a few minutes. There we go. Is branded content a new idea? That's the first one. What percentage of small businesses said content marketing would be more of a priority in 2021? What are your top business categories using branded content? What budget can we target with branded content? And we'll take a few minutes for everybody to answer those questions, and we'll get back on with the program. All right. I believe people have had a chance to answer the poll questions. If not, there we go. All right. So in response to the poll questions, number one, is branded content a new idea? 83% of you said no. What percentage of small businesses said content marketing would be more of a priority in 2021? It was a split. 50% of you said 90%, and the other 50% said 56%. As it relates to the top business categories using branded content, 83% of you said all of the above: financial, health, HVAC, and legal. And then in terms of what budgets can we target with branded content, everybody, 100% said all of the above. And we're going to get more insight into these with the presentation today by Julia Campbell of the Branded Content Project, and also Peter Lamb with Peter Lamb Consulting. First, Julia is an innovative branded content strategist who is leading a combined initiative focused on branded content for the Local Media Association, Local Media Consortium, and the Facebook Journalism Project. To date, the program she's involved with has generated over $50 million in branded content revenue, including over $2 million in new revenue for multiple Black, Indigenous, and people of color publications across the country that have participated in the Meta branded content sales boot camp here recently that they just held. Peter Lamb, the Peter Lamb Consulting. Peter has worked with some of the world's largest media companies, helping them orchestrate some of their most impressive successes. As a strategy consultant, Peter transforms media companies to make them more efficient, more competitive, and more profitable. And now I'm going to turn it over to Julia and Peter as they give a presentation on branded content. Good morning, Julia. Good morning, Peter.
Hey, it's good to be here, and thank you so much for having us.
It's great to have you guys here, and we look forward to just having a very informative and hopefully inspiring conversation to many of the publishers who are with us today.
Yeah, and just a couple housekeeping notes as we get started here. Keep questions coming in the chat. Peter and I are happy to stop anytime and address something that pops up. I'm so glad to see all the answers to the poll questions. We're going to cover those a little bit more in depth, but it looks like you guys are already on the road to expert based on the poll questions, which is exciting. So Peter, anything to add while I share my screen?
Oh, you're muted, Peter. Is he still muted? Peter, I think you're still muted.
Unmute. How's that? Is that better?
Perfect.
I said it was. I'm very happy that Chris decided to wake up early to join us this morning. Thank you, Chris. We appreciate
it. No problem.
Go ahead, Julia.
All right. Well, we are very happy to be here, and thank you so much for having us. We are definitely going to cover a lot of ground today, and Peter and I talk very, very quickly. So let us know if you have questions along the way, but we will leave some time for Q&A and to chat with Chris here at the end. So let's just jump right into it. I'll give my background a little bit, and then I'll let Peter do his intro. So I am Julia Campbell, the GM of the Branded Content Project. My background is actually in news on the broadcast side, and found branded content about 10 years ago. It's been a fun ride ever since. Peter, anything you want to add to your background?
It's what I'd like you to remember, ladies and gentlemen, with the introduction that Chris gave. $2 million in new revenue in the last cohort we have. Some of you have been involved with that. And I want you to think about that. If you've not had a portion, what percentage of that do you want in 2022? So that's my introduction. My goal is always to challenge you, push you a little bit harder. What percentage of 2 million do you want next year? Go ahead, Julie, I'm ready.
Always a good place to start. So let me give you just a little background on the Branded Content Project. And Chris did a great job introing kind of where we've been and where we're going. So the Meta Branded Content Project was designed to facilitate and create long-term, high-margin, high-impact, sustainable revenue for publishers of all shapes and sizes. So we've been working closely with LMA and LMC, as well as the folks at the Facebook Journalism Project, now the Meta Journalism Project, really to figure out how we can best serve the local media ecosystem, and be working with broadcasters, print publishers, digital pure plays of all shapes and sizes. You'll see a lot of those here. A lot of the folks that were in our recent boot camp are listed as well. So anybody across the spectrum, whether they're the tiniest of tiny digital pure play publishers to some of the biggest broadcast groups, have been participating with us in the past. And they've all learned a little bit from each other, and we're going to share a lot of what they've learned with all of you today. So the one thing that always comes up whenever we do these kinds of calls is people are still kind of confused, like what the heck is branded content? So we always start with the definition. So branded content is defined as any sales and marketing initiative, uses content to engage the user. It might be paid for a client who participates as part of the content. Maybe this helps supply some of that content, or maybe they just sponsor content that's distributed across any platform. And we know what everyone's always thinking at this point as we get started is this doesn't seem like a new idea. And you guys answered that perfectly in the poll question at the beginning. It is absolutely not a new idea. It is certainly something that's been around for decades, really. And so I'm going to share a little bit here. You see Andy Griffith here on the screen. This is a great example of how this has been around for a long time. Andy Griffith's show always ended each episode with a little branded content segment by St. Good Coffee, Post Cereal. I'm going to show you a little bit of a clip. But again, this is engaging, it's entertaining, and that's the reason it's so effective.
Well, young fella, don't tell me you talked your way into another ice cream cone.
No, Paul. Miss Ellie's making me a prescription.
She is?
That's what she said.
Already? Here it is. It's Post Sugar Crisp, and it tastes like candy, but it has controlled sweetness. Less sugar than the kids would use themselves.
Well, how often is this prescription to be taken?
Anytime, because Post Sugar Crisp gives youngsters the energy of whole wheat.
Paul, is that really a prescription?
No, but it's a darn fine commercial. Try Post Sugar Crisp, folks. They're good. I appreciate it, and good night.
Great branding for the client, very effective, and that's the reason why it's been around for so long. So it's been 100 years of media organizations really using this as an effective marketing tool and opportunity. Let's talk opportunity. So we definitely want to talk money, as Peter already mentioned today. So how much revenue are we talking about? We did some research with Burrell at the end of last year, and it is a $63 billion market. So there's a lot of money being spent in branded content, as content marketing specifically. The bottom left number there is one that's really important to realize. This is the reason we're seeing a lot of success recently, is that they surveyed a lot of small and medium businesses, and 56% of those businesses said that content marketing was become more of a priority in 2021. I saw a lot of you guys got that poll question right. This is something that is growing in priority. A lot has happened because of COVID. They needed a different way to communicate, longer form messages, more authentic messages. So it's been very effective for a lot of small businesses. That bottom right there, the businesses that are doing this type of marketing need you. So they need you for that brand lift. It's not enough just to produce content on their own. They need you for distribution, which is why media organizations are really uniquely positioned to do extremely well in this area. All right, I'm going to pass it over to Peter, who can talk a little bit to top categories that are spending in this type of advertising.
Julie and I always struggle with this presentation because we don't want to overwhelm you with statistics. The statistics are only as good as if you actually go ahead and use them. So take a look at that again. It's Burrell. If you don't know who Burrell is, one of the foremost research survey companies in the industry internationally. They did research in terms of which categories are hot, and a lot of you answered that absolutely correct. So again, when you look at in front of you, ask yourself, look at my client base, Who do I have there that this applies to? And more importantly, look at my prospect base. And this topic today is all about new revenue, new accounts. So look at that pipeline. Again, if you don't have anything in your pipeline, that could be a wake-up call. You should have HVAC in your pipeline. You should have financial in your pipeline. You should have medical in your pipeline. Take a look at the categories and figure out, where do I make my money in 2022? Next one. Okay. What Burrell did is, to the point we just made, and a lot of you answered this right, they came with categories that are hot, the A categories, and you look at that in front of you, everything you said. There's banks, there's medical, there's hospital, there's mental health. I'm doing a series of group in Cleveland. Mental health is one of the hot topics. Again, you look at this and ask yourself, okay, these are the 8 categories. Which of these do I currently have? Which of these should I be looking at? Which of these should I focus on in 2022? Again, everything I'm going to talk about for the next 10, 15 minutes with Julie is going to be, the topic today is new accounts, new revenue in 2022. We're going to push you to get that. I'm ready.
All right, well, let's give you a couple other data points here that we want to make sure we drill home for you. As far as advertising use and spend, you see that those circles there, those are the top forms of advertising that a lot of the small and medium businesses are utilizing. A lot of these are obvious. We know they're spending money on social media and SEM, and we know that there certainly is an increased activity around streaming video and OTT, but look at number 4 there. It's content marketing. So this is something that's becoming a bigger priority for businesses, and that's why we want to make sure everyone's focused on it going into 2022. And the users are planning to spend more money as well. So you see content marketing in the blue, it's either the same or increasing in a lot of areas. So this is something that we definitely want to make sure everyone's paying attention to. And there's a lot of growth potential there. And this is a really important one, because we know with social media advertising, it's often that these advertisers are trying to do a lot of that advertising on their own. But this is not an area where they can do this alone. They need you. They need you for content creation. They need you for distribution. So you see that this is not a DIY fixture. Only 9% of businesses are able to conduct this type of marketing on their own. They definitely need your help, which is why you guys are really uniquely positioned to really be an expert in storytelling and distribution. You guys have a competitive advantage over all agencies in your market, any boutique content shops. You guys have the audience and you have the content. So this is the place where you guys can really make a whole lot of money. And we certainly know that this is a great way to get information out. Storytelling has always been effective. It's the reason we use a lot of storytelling in our own news products. A couple notes that we want to kind of point out here on really why this works. We talked a lot about opportunity, but why does this work specifically in media companies? Is content is already what you do best. So you guys already, as a core mission, focus on storytelling and helping businesses grow. You also have the audiences that these advertisers need. So we definitely encourage everyone to think about how you're selling your audience, not a piece of content when we're selling branded content. It connects your best advertisers with your engaged audiences. This is also creating a unique value proposition. So these advertisers are looking for something new, and they're looking to you to give it to them. So this is something where you guys really have a lot of opportunity to increase revenues in this area. All right, this is my favorite topic, church and state, Peter.
A lot of times the question comes on a sales call, why should I be using you? Why should I be using branded content? Well, Mr. Customer, we are combining what makes most media organizations awesome is, number 1, our editorial capacity, and number 2, our revenue ability. What we have right here is we've combined them both in an initiative that will give you the best of both worlds. And I'm trying to say that slowly. That is something that you should bring up on every call. This is just not stories. This is just not advertising. It's a combination of church and state. And that's why it's absolutely so powerful. I'll talk some more about that later. Go for it, Julia.
Yep, Elsie.
Okay, let me try and slow it down and give you a little different perspective. That stands for think like the customer. It's not tender loving care. This is not the Seattle Medium doing a sex seminar. I forgot this is being recorded. Sorry, Chris. This is really important, ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to pricing. Because a lot of you always ask Julia and I questions, how should I price it? Pricing branded content has got nothing to do with what you believe your pricing should be, okay? It's everything to believe what the customer thinks. If you've heard me talk, you know I always say, you want to think like Amazon. Start with the customer and move backwards. They want your audience. You have to think about how much is your audience worth to them? How much is the event that Sunny Beach State of Black worth to them? And that's how the pricing gets done. Pricing is never done in branded content on your assets. It's based on what the customer sees the value, and that usually means double or triple what you believe it is. Very important. TLC for that one. Ladder. Let me go through this very quickly. A lot of you have heard this before. Look them in the eye. If you can't, again, This is the pure sales part of the presentation. You can't look them in the eye. They don't trust you. They won't buy anything. Ask questions. Let me go back to something Andy Griffith said. Is this a prescription? Most of you have never heard me say this. I just thought about this. There is no prescription without diagnosis. So unless you understand the customer's business, and let me tell you a quick story. My friend Julia is going to go see Dr. Chris Bennett tomorrow morning. Dr. Chris Bennett's an orthopedic surgeon. If Julia walks in and Chris said they've never met before, and Chris says, Julia, nice to meet you. Your surgery is tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. What should Julia do? So stop being polite. The answer is run like hell. Why? Because Chris has not done any diagnosis, not any MRI, no blood work. There was no diagnosis done, so you cannot give a prescription. Same thing with branded content. When you understand and do the questioning technique, that is when you go ahead and give them the right value of assets. D, do not interrupt. D, do not change the subject. We know that one. E, empathize. Well, Peter, you know, nobody reads print anymore. I understand how you feel, Mr. Customer. However, did you know that in the Black community in Houston, we have blah, blah, blah. This is what the research shows, okay? Number R is respond. Biggest failing most reps do today, customer asks them a question they don't know how to answer, and they don't answer at all. The rule of thumb is go back. It may take you 24 hours. Say to them, I need 24 hours. I'll get back to you. If you've never heard the latter conversation before, we can talk about it separately. But the key one there, personal opinion, is A, asking the right questions to give them the right program. I did that in 90 seconds. That's pretty amazing.
Time for Happy Meal. It's lunchtime.
Okay. Happy Meal. A lot of you have heard, so I'm not going to go into detail what it stands for. The key word to remember here is that McDonald's devised this many years ago. They wanted to attract the kids market. They wanted to package it on their most valuable assets. Keyword, assets. The most valuable assets were for kids, French fries, chicken nuggets, a burger, a little bit of fruit. They added fruit much later. They added drink later, and they added a toy as well much later. Those are the assets that appeal the most to kids. So when you look at what you're proposing, your package, your bundle for your advertiser, think about what your most important assets are. Yes, it's an RRP ad. Yes, it's some social. Yes, it might be an event, but take all the assets. If you're not using the word assets in your presentation, that hopefully that is your lesson from today. When you do the presentation, you should always talk about your assets. Just think about the assets that McDonald's has with French fries. Leave it at that. And it's making me hungry for lunch.
I know. Well, let's stay hungry a little bit here because now we have to talk about peanut butter and jelly. So Peter mentioned why you need to have a Happy Meal and two different choices of packaging. So inside those packages, you really want to include peanut butter and jelly in part of your Happy Meal planning for when you're doing pricing for and packaging for branded content. So what is peanut butter and jelly? You know, what this is we know that what's most effective for advertisers is when you combine two elements. So you want to combine some level of sponsorship and some level of customization for the advertiser. So think about sponsored content where they are just a brand associated with something that is being produced by you or by somebody else, on top of advertiser content. So that may be something much more specific about their brand, products, and services. These two create a really powerful combination. It helps the sponsors tell their story, and you're going to be able to tell their story through your distribution channels. It also assists your sponsors in achieving their content marketing goals. You're able to increase rate as well as revenue because you're able to kind of give them those two pieces, which they both need. So instead of just charging them for one, you're actually able to charge them for two things, all wrapped up into one package. It's also going to help you grow your share of advertiser wallet. So they certainly have money budgeted for these two areas. A lot of them have sponsorship budgets. They might have some media spend. So if you're able to combine these two things, you can get more of that advertiser wallet. And what we've seen as being really successful is being able to establish a profitable monthly recurring revenue. Because this is a longer term package, it's a longer term proposal, you're going to be able to have something that's established and laid in every month, which makes things a lot easier for you and increases the revenue for your organization. So we're talking about advertiser wallet, and we're also talking about the entire marketing budget. So what we're seeing a lot of media companies succeed with is to grow that share by targeting the entire marketing budget. So this includes the advertising budget and the media spend, sponsorship budgets, PR budgets. Keep in mind, a lot of these larger organizations have content marketing budgets, cause marketing budgets. So there's a lot of money out there that you guys have access to. And a lot of times this is being spent in content strategy. So you guys are really uniquely positioned to be able to offer your audiences, your distribution channels, and then access all of those marketing budgets that are out there.
Sheila, can I say something about that for a second?
Absolutely. I was about to tip it to you and then I wasn't sure. So go ahead.
So can you just go back to the previous slide for a second?
Yes, I sure can.
For those of you that have been in the business for a while, which I think it's a pretty large group, the old days of only getting a full page ROP are all gone, right? Because that would only touch the advertising budget. It's changed dramatically now. That in the old days, I think about 15, 20 years ago, we would never get sponsorship money. The PR people wouldn't even smell and talk to us. We sure as heck would never get content marketing and cause marketing. So in the questioning technique that you develop when you're talking to your advertiser, JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, et cetera, make sure you ask them about every single one of those budgets. Chances are the person running the cause marketing budget might be different. They're not going to offer that information to you. Your role is to ask them about every one of those budgets listed there. And chances are, if you ask, you'll get, if not one, all of them. Thanks, Julia. Sorry for the interruption.
No, I love it. It's definitely a great place to increase a little bit of revenue for everybody. We're going to take one of those pieces for just a second here and talk a little bit about cause marketing, because this is really an important area. You know, cause, community, and purpose-driven marketing is something that you guys are also uniquely positioned to excel in, because as media organizations, you are the three-legged stool. So the things that you do best and do as your core mission is providing information, education, entertainment where people want it, when they want it. You also help businesses grow. In addition to that, most of you already help the nonprofit community with their causes and community efforts. So these three things are wrapped up in a lot of cause marketing initiatives. So think about that too. What are those businesses focused on outside of selling products? A lot of them are focused on certain types of community and causes that they want to make sure they're positioning in front of your audiences. So this is really a unique place for you guys to help them get their message out. Peter, you know, you've seen a lot of different businesses that have these types of causes they're really focused on right now.
You know, all you have to do, ladies and gentlemen, is think about what's happening in the world around us. But think about your city in particular, to ask yourself, what is the hottest topic there right now? And that's what you go after. That's exactly what branded content is. Finding a topic, finding a cause, finding somebody's passion. Again, let me focus on mental health for 2 seconds. Mental health is, in the teenage world, it is the #1 hot topic. Ask yourself, in my city, who are the 1 or 2 or 3 organizations that really would like to get behind anything on mental health? And that's where you go after. Find the cause, chase the money. It's there.
Absolutely great. We're going to show you guys an example of somebody who does this well here in a minute. All right, so we're going to jump into success stories a little bit here. The first success story actually are from people that are on this call. So the Houston Defender, what you saw Sunny a minute ago, and Chris Bennett is here from Seattle Medium, obviously. And these are success stories we've been seeing. We also have Real Times and a lot of other folks we've been working with in those boot camps. What we've been doing with them is branded content series. They're lifestyle series focused on certain topics that have been that are covering information that we know people are visiting local news sites looking for, and advertisers who are trying to reach those audiences. We've seen a lot of success in finances. We've seen a lot of success with active aging, parenting, healthy living. All these things are information that we know our audiences need, and they're searching out and they're coming to you looking for them. And those audiences need to be met up with those advertisers. And this is a really great way to bring in a sponsorship and be able to bring in a lot of revenue. Peter, what else have we seen? We've seen Precinct Reporter, a few others.
No, it's the topic I'd like you all to think about on the call is, why not me, right? Why am I not doing this? How do I take what Julia just said that Chris does and what the Afro does and Sunny does? Why can't I replicate that in my city with my paper, with my media company? Because ladies and gentlemen, the support's there. The question is just going out there, finding the right companies and getting a sponsor. Go for it.
All right, well, we have to ask Chris about it because he's right here. So Chris, why
That's
don't you do
right.
it? Yeah, I know, it's like we're not gonna, yeah, we're flipping the tables now. We're interviewing Chris instead. Chris, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about why this worked and what categories worked for you and how you've really been able to expand it into different categories beyond these 10?
I think first of all, you know, when you look at the branded concept model, I think the first thing that people have to get their head around is that this is not necessarily a new concept, as you pointed out earlier. A lot of us are already doing branded content or something similar to branded content. You know, anytime you have a special edition and you're seeking sponsors that are compatible with that special edition you're putting out, you're actually producing branded content. And so it's you've got to just expand your thinking and say, okay, in terms of these categories, you know, what advertisers are going to match up with this, is going to be a perfect fit for. It's going to be right in their wheelhouse, and those are the people that you seek out and get the sponsorships from. The other thing is you have to figure out that price point that works for you and that works for the advertiser. And there is no real science to it. It's really more of an art, as Peter explained. And so you have to figure that out, and so that you're actually making a profit, but you don't want to leave money on the table, which is always difficult to do because it's a different kind of a sale and a pitch. When you're walking in to an advertiser with your rate sheet, you know what your full page ad is, you know what your quarter page ad is. In these situations, and I'm going to ask Peter a question as it relates to this, these situations, you have to be kind of versatile. You've got to be willing to listen and hone in on some keys that the advertiser is giving you. And one of those things is, and I'm going to ask Peter if he can expand upon this a little bit, is the opportunity that gets created when an advertiser asks you, can you? And a lot of times people go into branded content because they're afraid of the concept per se, and they're afraid of digital. And so when somebody asks them the question, can you, they freeze up and be like, well, I don't think we can do that, or I don't know if we can do that, sort of things. But Peter, can you speak to the opportunity that's created in this concept, especially when you talk about the added, the Happy Meal approach, when an advertiser actually says, well, can you do X, Y, and Z?
Well, ladies and Chris, it's a great question. I think I've been asked that question a very long time. The answer is always yes. And I know there are a lot of editorial and content folks on the call, so please close your ears for a second. In the sales perspective, the answer is always yes. Or the polite answer is, let me give that some thought and give you some options how to make it work. But again, if you think about assets, the one way of answering that question, because Chris has maybe given me a tough one, is ask them, what is the result you really want to have happen in 2022? Try and throw it back to them. And they might say, well, I want to reach this particular audience, this segment. They say, yes, I can help you with that. But you always try and buy yourself some time. But the other point that Chris made is really interesting, I think, which is very important for this group. And somebody always laughed at me for the past 18 months since we've been doing this. Whenever you do your rate sheet and you put there how much digital, how much is social, what's the ROP over the next 12 months, the answer is always double it. Because the way we've created our rate sheets always been at the lowest possible. With branded content, the value added is, number one, they get your audience. Number two, more important than your audience, they get you. They get Chris Bennett, they get Clyde, they get Sonny, they get Imelda, they get Larry. They get you and your expertise as to how to reach the Black audience in your community, and they don't have it. That in itself, I don't have more time to answer, but I can tell two people on this call where I gave them a very high number and they said 60,000 and the customer didn't blink. And went, shit, I should have made it 120. Yep, you should have made it 120. They didn't even blink because they have no way of reaching your audience. Sorry, Chris, it was a long answer. I apologize.
No, you're right on point. I think that as it relates to pricing, I mean, we've been fairly successful in selling branded content. And I will tell people, I didn't understand this a year ago at this time. I did not grasp or understand this concept at all. Julia had a lot of conversations with Julia about it, and she explained things to me. It wasn't really till I actually delved in and started pitching and selling people and having some success that it really got a full grasp of, and I'm still learning. But I will say that, our first branded content series that we sold for, I think it was about $34,000 a month, I believe. $3,500, $4,000. I think it's $4,000 a month.
$3,500. I remember.
$3,500. Yeah, $3,500. We sold. It's been a while, so the numbers have changed quite a bit. That's why I don't recall.
Yes, they have.
So the first one we sold was $3,500 a month. The most recent one that I have sold has been over $15,000 a month, and that just comes in understanding and listening to the client and understanding that every time they say, "Can you do X, Y, and Z?" the price goes up. So I don't go in with a price point per se when we first start talking to them. In general, I know what we can't go below that makes sense for us, but I don't go in with this package is going to cost you $5,000, $7,500 that I give to the client. We actually start listening first, and then we start adjusting numbers once we go back and start putting the entire proposal together for them. And so that's been part of the success that we've had. And like I said, just identifying the different categories. The most important thing about the branded content project is that this stuff is really plug and play. Everything is put in place for you, from the stories and the articles that get produced to how you can have them published on your website, the support, the pitch decks, all the information you need. They already have it. And so all you've got to do is take all that, do your research, do a little studying, figure out how it fits into what you guys are doing locally, and then put some price points on it, and then go out and sell it. But it's the best part of this for us has been the plug and play, while we learned how to really incorporate the branded concept into our business portfolio. And now we've expanded outside of these categories that they have and are doing other things that are branded content based. Peter, I had another concept question for you as it relates to.
Wait a second. We're supposed to be asking you questions. What are you talking about?
I know, but you were on here to
from?
answer questions. Actually, let me stop real quick, because I want to encourage people, if they have any questions right now, to put them in the chat so we can bring you guys into the conversation. Because it's not just Peter, Julia, Sonny, and I having a conversation, but this is supposed to be interactive to answer people's questions as well as they come up. So if you put your questions in the chat, we'll get to them. But Peter, I wanted to ask you a question about added value, because a lot of the publishers, always tend to think they need to put in added value and throw things in there for free. And wanted to get your thoughts about, added value, particularly when you talk about the Happy Meal concept. You're adding different things into this thing, but when they added value, to me, I always say it's like you're throwing in all of these freebies. And I want to get your thoughts on how people should approach the Happy Meal versus the actual added value with no money attached to it.
I am a big believer. It's two trains of thoughts on added value. One is it always makes the presentation proposal a lot more palatable to the advertiser when there is some value added in there as well. Right? The challenge with adding value is you can't put something in there that's going to cost you a lot of money. So if it's my answer is always, if it's something you throw in there in terms of my time, I'm happy to once a month come and do an audit of your branded content, and it's something that nobody else will do. And if they say, well, yeah, I like that, and then you can tell them exactly what it normally would be, but I like having it in there, proposal, boom, value added, X, Y, and Z. Value added, you know what, once every quarter, Peter and Julie will do a quick 30-minute audit of your company. Great, because under normal circumstance, you can't get Peter and Julia. Something like that doesn't cost you a fortune, always, I think at the end of the day, makes it much easier than to say, you know what, I like that. I don't really get that very often. Once a month, Chris Bennett, or once a month, or once every quarter, I'll get you to talk to Sonny for 30 minutes, what Sonny's doing. People want to hear that. Once every quarter, what I can do is I can get you to talk to one or two of my other customers as well to get their perspective. Anything that'll make them go, that's interesting, but it won't cost you very much money. Great question, Chris. Very good question. Let me just say one last thing, Chris, on that.
Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen, it all is a mindset, right? The mindset we all used to have is that we deal from position of weakness. That used to be our mindset in the media business, in papers. That's changed. You should only have a position of strength mindset. Why? You have the audience. Now you have the vehicle. You have the support. All you need is a couple of tough guys right there, and ladies. They'll go out and sell like crazy. And I want to make sure you heard what Chris said. 18 months ago, $3,500 a month. Most recent one, $15,000 a month. That's a big jump and it's all because, personal opinion, Chris's confidence in what he's selling and understanding it and conveying that to the advertiser. There's a lot of money out there. So, longer question than you want to say, Chris. I'm sorry.
That's fine. Julia, we have a question in the chat, and I think that you probably can answer this best. Is Jocelyn asked, how can we see a proposal?
Oh, Jocelyn, I'd be happy to show you where all the assets are, give you access to everything. Our goal as the brand and content project is to make sure that you guys are able to access all the information that we have and make sure you're involved in any kind of training. I'll tell you too, where Sonny and Chris had mentioned the boot camps that we did with this group, and Brian, who's in the chat as well, as talked about closing their first deal last night. He was also in the boot camp. We are opening up new boot camps in January, so we'd love to get you involved, and then we can show you all the proposals. We can get your team all prepped and trained, and make sure that you're out there pitching gigantic deals like Chris Bennett. And so that's really what we want for everybody, is you guys bring in a bunch of money. So we can certainly get you in touch with all the information you need.
Yeah. Julia, you've been working with a lot of companies, media companies across the country for some time. They've generated over $50 million. And I'm sure there's people who were sitting there saying, okay, that sounds good, but how does that relate to us? Can you kind of talk about some of the transformations that you've seen in media outlets, particularly small media outlets, as it relates to the branded content module?
Yeah, there's different types of branded content out there, and we've seen something that works for the biggest organizations where they have a full brand studio and they're producing video and drone footage and all of that. But what we're seeing most successful and most sustainable are things like the series, something that is a little bit more manageable as far as publisher size. So, it's something where we've seen all sorts of different things work. I think the thing that is the most important, and I see lots of folks asking to attend the boot camp, which makes me so happy, is really bringing everybody together. I would say if there's any one piece that makes this work over other things, is having a sense of community and hearing who everyone else is pitching this to, how they're presenting their own publication, their own audience. And having that resource, not just with me and Peter, but all the other publishers, just like all of you. So that's really, what we've seen has been most successful. Is it isn't so much one media organization making a ton of money on their own. How do we all work in conjunction with each other and learn what works and what doesn't, so everyone doesn't make the same mistakes and everyone learns what's working and everyone can run out and do the exact same thing. So we certainly think the boot camp is a good way to do that. And honestly, like it's been successful in all sorts of different sizes. But there's lots of different forms of this. So it's not just a one stop shop type of thing. There's lots of different ways to carve this up. So we can help you guys do that.
Right. And Julia, you bring up a good point, because I go back to Brian. He just in the chat, Brian Townsend from the Precinct Reporter Group, said, because of Peter, Julia, and Chris, we just closed our first deal. And I think that kind of speaks to what you just talked about, the collaborative effort in this, where people aren't just by themselves trying to navigate and figure things out, but more importantly, they can learn from other people who have closed deals. They can learn from experts like Peter and yourself, and really get the coaching they need to be successful when it comes to branded content. With that being said, how important is it for people to make sure that they have at least, one or two people on their staff that are dedicated to the branded content concept in order for them to be successful? Because I've seen a lot of people who kind of jump in there and they've had issues with their salespeople, because their salespeople, are having problems transitioning from traditional ad buys to the branded content concept, and it might not have worked out well for them. Other times, some people have been able to throw a brand new person in there that's been very successful, or one of their salespeople who might have been kind of their mid-tier salesperson who's been very successful with branded content.
Yeah, the one thing that we've talked about a lot in the last 3 years when we're working with different teams, and the same thing that we see, it doesn't matter if you're from a gigantic corporate structure or a small one-man band type of organization, is you have to have somebody who's going to be the evangelist for this type of product. You have to have someone that believes in it, and they basically take this and run. That's the reason we've seen some people succeed over others. It isn't so much intricacy of digital platforms or largest audience out there. It's all the organizations that say, there's one person at the organization says, I understand this, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to focus on it for the next 4 to 6 weeks. That's really where the success is. So you got to pick your evangelist. It doesn't always have to be the publisher. I mean, having top-down buy-in is obviously an important thing, but really, think through who is somebody who can take this and run with it as a project. It could even be the newest person. I mean, Peter, you've seen a lot of different media organizations where it's one of their newest rep that ends up taking this and running with it, and make a lot of money that way.
In selling and training terminology, we always say we try and find the person who's unencumbered by the facts. So somebody who hasn't been in media for 25 years and sold everything else. It's one. I mean, and Chris, I would attack your question a little bit differently. If you think about what, ladies and gentlemen, what Chris just said, after a webinar like this, I would make a concerted effort to find a sales rep to focus only on branded content. Why? Look at Chris said, $3,500 to $15,000. Let's say you end up somewhere in the middle. It's very, very easy to justify an ROI as sales rep. That's one. That is number one. Because when you have a dedicated person coming in brand new, focus, the training is all taken care of. They will be up and running in a hurry. You'll see the revenue in 2022. But it's definitely one of the things I push a lot is try and find somebody new that can come in and just stir it up and make a lot of calls because the money's there.
Yeah. Peter, in relation to the amount of time that, it's you want to have buy-in from the top of your organization, but certainly we all have a threshold for timeframes that we allow our salespeople to have for them to bring in some money. Basically, in terms of how we measure the time frame, whether or not we're getting a good return on investment from our person who's handling branded content, is that the same time frame, or is it a different time frame from a person you bring in who was just doing regular, ad buys, full page ROPs, quarter page ROPs, that sort of thing, and sponsorships? Is there a difference, or is it the same?
I think there's quite a bit of difference, Chris, because somebody selling branded content, the support system is completely in place already, the fulfillment system is in place, and the numbers are so much bigger, as you just mentioned. So again, interesting question. Rule of thumb is I expect somebody by month 4, month 5 that's selling ROP and regular to really do something well. Branded content, if you coming in focus only on that, by the time you get to after month 2, you should be able to close your first deal. The key is just teaching them the basics of prospecting, but all the other stuff, it's there already. It's already been done. And then we're seeing that, what we're seeing in some places that we're trying to transition some of the editorial folks that are younger into selling because they have the questioning skills. If you have the questioning skills and we can teach you the discipline of making the number of calls, life is good. So great question. Great question.
Right.
The other thing, let me answer another one, because this happens a lot in bigger organizations. When a rep has 30, 40 products to sell and branded content's number 41, it'll fail. Julie and I have been dealing with 1 or 2 organizations just like that. So it almost argues even more important to have somebody more of a specialist, because when they're in front of a customer and have everything else to offer, if they only offer them branded content and all the assets, it's a lot easier for them and a lot easier for the rep as well.
Right. We're getting a lot of questions in the chat about the boot camp that's coming up. How long and how much is the boot camp? More people are interested in. Most people are asking about the boot camp. So Julia, is there a cost associated with the boot camp, and in general, how long does it last, and what does that commitment look like?
So we're going to do something a little different than we did with the boot camps this year. Is that it was really more like a 5 or 6 month type of project, but we know you guys certainly have enough things to do, and a lot of other accelerator programs and all sorts of things cooking all the time at all your organizations. So we're going to make these a little bit shorter. So we're going to focus on smaller length type of boot camps, 4 to 6 weeks each. There is no cost associated with being part of the boot camp. Some of the products we have may have a small cost associated with them once you bring the advertiser on, but there's no upfront cost to anything. We're training everyone in the industry for free. We want to make sure you guys are getting this information and the knowledge up front. And all you have to do is email me to get involved. So we're going to start rolling out all the messaging on these boot camps the next 2 weeks. So we're actually telling you guys about it a little bit early, since we haven't even officially announced when they're starting, but they will start in January. We're going to have a few focused on specific categories, like let's all focus on health. Let's all focus on cannabis. Let's all focus on grocery and healthy living. Throughout the year next year, we maybe do some things around sports. There's all sorts of fun things that we're going to be doing. Very hyper focused, and maybe something that's great for a rep, and maybe something that you bring in somebody from your content side to participate in. So lots of options, absolutely free to participate. We're going to train you. Everything we've learned from the publishers that have been through this already in the past. Peter's going to bring all his expert knowledge. Would love to have all of you guys. So just email me. I put the email in the chat. So email me, and I'll make sure that Clyde gets me the emails that are dropped in there too, so I can email you guys directly.
Right. And Julia, I think we can back up a little bit, because we've got the categories sitting here, but can you kind of explain, at least at the base level, what the deliverables look like as far as the branded content project is concerned, with people, what they're actually selling, what they're presenting, and what that looks like?
Yeah, we can kind of get into the nuts and bolts on it a little bit. So what we do is we produce weekly lifestyle articles in each of these categories. So think about, you know, top ways to stay healthy during Christmas, and the entertainer might have something about, you know, COVID safety around the holidays, and the Go Green series may have an article or two around healthy pets, or how do we keep our environment clean and safe for our kids. So it is a weekly lifestyle article series, so it's certainly not, it's definitely little J journalism, not big J journalism, but then there's an opportunity to bring in sponsors around that content. And we help you guys with every step. We give you the pitch decks to sell. We actually give you email scripts. We do a lot of coaching. So we do a lot of prospecting and practice on pitching, and just to get you guys ready to sell these types of things. And we have some folks that bring their own products. So they've had trouble selling a health initiative in the past. Like, we can help you guys sell your own things as well. So we'll give you the product if you don't have one. And if you have one on your own, we're going to help you sell that one too. So that's the big thing, is just, we know that there's money here. We know there's revenue. So we're going to make sure we give you all the pieces. We have digital technology that is provided if you guys need that. We can teach you guys how to do it in your own CMS. So all options are on the table. And certainly we're seeing a lot of success for lots of different types of publishers.
Right. And I think we're running short on time. I think we have a few minutes till we get to the top of the hour. I believe this is supposed to go to 11. Peter, for people who are interested in this branded content concept, you know, what would you suggest to them as the number one thing that they would need to do, or priority that they need to take into consideration as they're considering moving forward with branded content as a significant revenue stream for their organization?
Why do you always ask me the tough questions and ask Julia the easy ones? Come on.
because you're the MVP.
That's right.
You're the Michael Jordan of this.
That's right.
It's a great question. I would say you start and take a look at your market and ask yourself, number one, can I find somebody locally that can help me sell this? Number two, who are the biggest companies here? I mean, example, I'm doing a lot of work in Ohio right now, and we have Procter & Gamble that really would want to align themselves. And then I think number three, probably more important than all the above, if I were you on this call, some of them, I would check in with Chris and check in with Sunny and say, I need 20 minutes. Tell me how you started. Because Julia said something very, very crucial to all the boot camps we're in. Yes, there's some learning from Julia and Peter, but most of the learning comes is when you talk to somebody else that's doing exactly what you're doing in a different market and learning from what they do. So do a little bit of homework, local homework, and a little bit more research with this particular group. Say, so Chris, how'd you get to, tell me the process you went through to get 3,500? Because Julia and I were there with you, so we know. But somebody else, I think you need to know. Brian, so you closed JP Morgan Chase. Tell me what you did. How did you really do it? We've been there, so we know. But it's a lot better coming from Willie than from me and Julia. Does that make sense? The answer?
It makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. Julia, I guess my question to you is, you know, you approach the branded content in just a way that's just, you're just excited about it. And, you know, a lot of times we all know that sales and advertising can be stressful. But can you kind of talk about this journey that you've seen people go through, and, you know, they go from frustration and, you know, just a lot of, I think frustration is a wrong term to use, but, you know, just to have the everyday stress of trying to, you know, sell advertising the way they've been doing for so many years. And then all of a sudden you see the light bulb go off, and then you actually see people who are actually excited and having fun dealing with branded content. Can you kind of talk about that transition a little bit? Because, you know, I remember that when you first talked to me about it, you said, we're going to have a lot of fun. And I was like, I don't know.
I said, you have to do this. You do not have a choice. That's exactly what I told you. It's not an option for you. So I mentioned this a little bit at the very top of the call, but my background is on the content side. So I'm coming from the editorial and the news side of things. And that's, I think, a big and important piece to branded content versus other types of advertising. Is this makes sense. This makes sense from the newsroom's perspective. It makes sense from the client's perspective. And that's why I get so excited about it. I think that's when the light bulb goes off for people, is when they realize, like, this isn't another ad unit that I'm placing on my site. It's not just another size that I'm selling to somebody with a price tag on it. This is doing what you guys already do. This is something where you're providing information to your audience. And this is something you guys do and excel in every day. And I think that's why it gets so exciting and the light bulb goes off. The other thing is, as we're all trying to make that digital transformation, for our organizations, this is something that is much closer to the way we used to sell in the past. Like, this is about branding. It's about positioning your own trusted news organization next to brands. And that's where the second light bulb goes off, is this isn't something where it's a very confusing digital process. This is something where this is what you guys have been doing. You know what your audience is, you know how important your publications are, and how can you bring in brands as partners to position themselves next to that type of content. So that's kind of the two pieces where things go off, kind of light bulbs kind of go off, is this is what you guys already know how to do. And this is something we've all been doing for a long, long time. And it's good for the audiences. We're providing them information and education. That's hugely important.
Right. Well, go ahead, Peter. I think we have a few minutes so I can squeeze you in.
Let me just take another tack on what Julie just, it's an incredible question. So the beauty of Julie and I working, she's from the content side, I'm from the revenue side. And I want you, when I saw branded content, all I could think was, how else am I gonna get 15 grand a month for 12 months? How many quarter pages do I have to sell? How many full pages? How many people do I have to bribe? And the fact that we got access to all those budgets on the one slide, PR budgets, and the fact that all of a sudden JP Morgan Chase is talking to us, that to me was where the huge opportunity, we had finally had the mousetrap to get the big boys. So,
all right. I want to thank Julia. I want to thank Peter for having this discussion with us today. They're going to have another seminar coming up on a different topic here, I think in the month of June. The recording for this will be available on the NNPA Fund website, I believe on Monday, so people can review this or share it with other people in their organization. But certainly want to thank you guys for your time and really thank us for this great conversation. Hopefully it's been very informative and inspiring to so many people today.
Yeah, appreciate being here. Thank you guys. It's great
to see all of you. Thanks, Sonny. Appreciate it. Good afternoon, everybody. Be safe.
All right. Want to thank everybody for joining us on this webinar. And I believe the next NNPA Fund webinar will be on December 14th, which is going to be generating event revenue. Be on the lookout for that via email, or you can definitely go to the NNPA Fund site to check that out for more information. Want to thank everybody for tuning in. Have a great afternoon, and hopefully everybody can get involved with branded content and make lots of money.
Yeah, be rock star like Chris.
Ooh, I like that. Bye, everybody. Good afternoon.
Thanks all.
Ciao, ciao. Bye.